Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Security Table. This is Chris Romeo, joined by Matt Coles and Izar Tarandash. And who knows where we'll go today. It's almost like maybe we have a plan, maybe we don't. But it will have
we had a
something to do with
completely
AI.
different plan.
Yeah, and now for something completely different, which is a famous line from something. Can't remember. But vibe coding, we're back on this topic again. And maybe we'll start with this Hacker News, not the Y Combinator Hacker News, the Hacker News. I have to be specific. It's important in this world. So there was a article published on secure coding in a vibe coding maybe something. I don't know.
It was vibed, yeah, definitely.
Secure vibe
Secure
coding.
vibe coding.
How the young people are talking now. I'm a little behind the times.
How them youngsters?
All right, so this is revolutionary, right? This document. This is going to change the world. It's going to make the AI pay attention and be security conscious.
Actually, if you did say when you're vibe coding, pay attention to this article when you're creating whatever it is we're creating. Maybe somebody should try that. Actually,
some of it is generated by the multi-stepped prompting is a user or human interaction step, right? It's not something that the machine can do. I guess unless you have one AI talking to another AI.
Well, if you if you build agents and whatnot, or if you bring in multiple AI, like, hey, if you're talking to Claude, did you vibe coding and you want, bring in Gemini, like, Claude, go figure out what Gemini would do and then sort of merge.
So I'm still back on this vibe coding thing is not for production use. We argued about this on a previous episode, but since somebody brought up vibe coding again as something to talk about, like, this isn't for production.
People are using it for production.
Depends on what you call production.
Well, production is everything and production is nothing. But that's a nonsensical statement.
No, but seriously, I mean, depends on whose standards of
work.
I thought that Matt was troubling me there.
Sorry,
it's covered his camera.
I'm figuring out a better camera position here, so I'm not like looking sideways. Anyway,
this is my better profile. But no, really. So the question, one of the questions here is what production nowadays, right? So
it's true.
A lot of people who get to a working MVP and say that this is good enough, this is what's going, and then they wait for some kind of event, like an event. Actually put the everything around. A lot of people have had some good success with code that is less production hardened than we usually would think to go into production. But hey, it's not for us to judge. People do what people will do.
So is that
we can judge. It's just
true.
We're gonna judge. We're security people. That's what we do.
Yeah.
But is that code maintainable that comes out of the vibe coding process right now? Like, let's say, I'll give you a scenario. You use vibe coding to create your MVP while you're waiting for some financial event like an investment. And then you get the investment. Can you then hire 10 developers and they can just pick up that code? Or are they going to have to start from scratch and rebuild?
So here comes the question. If you're going to hire 10 developers, why did you code it in the beginning?
Because you didn't have the investment yet. Right. You didn't have the investment, the money to pay for 10.
That's right. The thing is, I think that we all agree that most chances are that the first version that's coming out is not going to be the final version that's going to do everything that you want.
Sure.
So ideally, it has to be maintainable. And I've been having a lot of fun lately looking at things that people say that they've coded and looking at the different inputs that they gave to the system and figuring out what kind of impact guardrails output at the vibe time had on the coding time. And you do get a lot of stuff that's let's let, I think my personal opinion that is that there is a lot of uh, value in this vibe coding thing, but not in the ways that a lot of people seem to be thinking. I'm being very careful with my generalizations.
Why?
Why now? Why are you
Yeah.
being careful now?
What's changed today? The
It's early in the morning on a Sunday, on a Monday.
Yeah.
I just don't want to piss off the whole world yet.
Why
So
is that any
Why
different?
are we completely changing our dynamic of the security
wait,
table?
I was going somewhere with this. Oh yeah. So I think that there is some value in the thing, but for the boilerplate code, right? The stuff that you are more than done writing again and again and
What
again. The
what's
stuff
bo-
that
what's boilerplate in a vibe
the
coding world?
the stuff that you would go to GitHub and find the ultimate uh, boilerplate for fast API, and that becomes like the source of your own thing, because at the end of the day, it already has the login stuff in there. It already has the recovery email in there. It already has the database stuff in there and all that.
Well,
And
so
it's just,
we need to bring in a new topic. So build versus buy in
oh yeah, that's a
the
good one.
world of open source, right? So what you're
Or in the
talking
world of
about
AI.
is, well, what's the value of open source in a world of AI and vibe coding? So if in the past you would have used open source as a way to bootstrap your development effort, and you would have acquired integrated components. But now, why not just let the AI reinvent the wheel every time?
So that too goes to maintainability, right?
Well, it does,
To
but what's the decision of the developer who doesn't know that, right? The developer who's using vibe coding, unless they know, make sure that you make use of open source whenever possible, so that you don't reinvent the wheel each time.
So that's a really good point. And during the weekend, I actually saw a GitHub repository. I think it's called Awesome Windsurf Files or something. So Cursor and Windsurf and all that good stuff, you can actually put a series of rules files in place before you start doing your web coding thing, that they sort of like direct the thing around, right? So they become part of the context sent in, and that influences what you get back. And yeah, some people are having some very good results and some good ideas into what to put on those files, so that it shapes the final problem. So for example, you could go in there and say, you're always going to use Python, and your base framework is going to be Fast API, and you are going to
Okay.
use these libraries, and you are going to use Pydantic and all that good stuff.
So they're making architectural choices basically
Yep.
for the LLM before the vibe coding session starts.
Yeah. And what's in the back of my head is, are we seeing here an evolution from best practices and what I would do if it was me writing this thing from scratch, away from that really, really funny video on YouTube about vibe coding, that it's some talking to a computer. Man, I laughed so hard on that one. But if it's moving away from the simple vision of vibe code that we all run around headless chickens a month or so ago, saying, "Oh no, my God, the market is going to be inundated by bad code," right? But we didn't
In other
realize
words,
that.
cooler headset prevails, and you have proper architecture leading it.
I don't know if we can say that for sure, because at the end of the day, nobody's out there saying, "Here's how we vibe code," right? But it does seem to me that there is a movement towards, let's not start from zero, let's start from good foundations. But I don't know how popular that is. I don't know how that reaches the people who are vibe coding their prototypes and then putting them on production and whatnot. So I don't know. I guess that it's coming from good people out there who know what good code looks like and are trying to do the right thing. And thank God that we have those. But another thing that I was thinking about and I wanted to run with you guys is the thing that I'm struggling with writing down. I have a theory that this whole thing is going to, if it hasn't already, and that's where I need you guys' help, that it's going to lead us to parallel of what you see in the SOC or in people's desktops, and that is click-through and alert fatigue. I mean, because of the people that we run with, I can certainly say, yes, I know people who read through an EULA before clicking. But most people out there, I would venture, they don't. They just see a box with an OK button, mash on it, and go play solitaire on their window.
You haven't given up on reading the same EULA over and over and over.
That's who we are. But even so, I have seen EULAs that just have the OK button. But anyway, that's a different discussion. But beyond EULAs, if you have seen or worked with people in a SOC, you do know the amount of alerts they get. And sometimes, unfortunately, what can you do? You mash through alerts and mash through message because your brain already does the pattern recognition and you see that it's a false positive, or no, you've seen this thing before and it's not for now, or you do your prioritization and that's not something that you need to jump at now. And taking an idea from that model, from those two things, and then putting together the fact that, and I read this article on mental models while developing that I found super interesting. And it was basically saying that reading code is harder than writing code because when you are reading code, you have build a model of the system in your head as you go, while when you write code, you have that model in your head and you are translating it into code. So you are
Developers
bringing
have
to fruition.
developers have a model in their head of what they're working on.
Basically. And
Beyond their single file, maybe beyond the module that they're working on.
beyond something that they have some kind of structure and they are translating that structure into reality, into code. While when you're reading, if it's not in the context of that thing that you are building, then you have to build those structures in your head and put everything into context. And my God, I'm overloading the word context so much. You have to build that thing as you read to put that code into the right place, into that right structure to decide if this is good code or not. So my contention is that over time, people are going to use agents, vibe coding and whatever we call it, to create code. As Chris pointed at earlier, that code is going to be corrected as it's written. So hopefully it comes out good. And by good, I mean performant, secure, and actually does the thing that it's supposed to do. But I think that as these systems evolve, and people probably don't have the money yet to get those 10 developers. Did we talk about the 10 developers here, or was it before we started recording?
It was about 5 minutes ago.
Fog. Wait.
This moment brought to you by Ezar's favorite drink.
His exploding monster.
Oh, hey, you're not paying us any money. I didn't use the brand.
We have to get some.
Sorry. Well, good. Our monster as opposed to.
So,
Monster.com.
as I was saying, so people will use like agents and whatnot instead of those 10 developers to fix the code that was initially written. And what they're going to get if they don't just set it for automatic and go home, what they're going to get is a set of PRs. And I think that over time, we're going to end up with something like PR fatigue. And people are going to click through PRs, assuming that the agent knows what it's doing, which was the
I think
initial assumption.
that's the scary part. What you just described, and just to summarize, so you said it's more difficult in this point from this point forward to read code than it is to write code. The challenge is we haven't introduced the word trust into this conversation yet. And if you can't read the code, if you can't process and read the code that's coming out of the machine, then we're in big trouble because you have no
Yes.
idea. You're just putting your trust into the machine and saying, okay, I believe that ChatGPT's codex that I was playing with here while we were talking, or they all have one. Everybody's got an agent that does this stuff now, right?
Yeah.
You're inherently trusting that this thing is creating the code in the way you described it: performant, secure. I'll even add focused on privacy of the end user, compliant with laws and rules and regulations of the world. We've got the EU CRA that's dropping now. It's about to flip our whole world on upside down. But how do you trust? Like, how can you trust something that you can't understand what it's giving you? That's the scary thing.
Especially as a vibe coder, you don't have a computer science background. You don't have a developer experience, most likely, right? If we have successfully democratized development to a point that anybody can do it, those anybody's may have no experience in actually doing software engineering or system design or development. And so how do you trust? What's your basis for trust? Because you don't know how to read the code you're writing in the first place. Like, you couldn't do it by hand, right? Taking this to an extreme. I know most of the vibe coding is probably done by developers who are working on a project, either for an open source project or for a commercial organization, and are using vibe coding because they can be more efficient or more effective. But
I don't know that it is that. I've heard of, like, in the I was reading something, I don't remember where it was, that the marketing teams are some of the earliest vibe coders because they got tired of waiting for, and one of you guys might have said this in the previous episode.
that sounds scary.
Yeah, they got tired of waiting for developers' priority to catch that, for their features to be caught up and to go to the top of the stack. So they started vibe coding their own solutions to their problems that they had.
So let's think about that. Just think about that scenario for a moment, right? So you have somebody in marketing who needs something done because of their customer is, pushing for it. They have a sale on the line or whatever. So they vibe code. They don't know what they're getting out, right? They have to rely on others potentially to help them understand, or to rely on the agents to be omniscient and be able to produce good quality code, whatever good quality code in their context. But if they get the PRs, they don't know what to do with the PRs.
Wait. I to ask for clarification. So these marketing people, they are starting from zero, or are they adding features to an existing system?
I thought what I was reading is they were trying to solve their own business problems that required some development. So they weren't coding features for a product. They were like, hey, I really need this data munged into this format, and nobody in engineering or IT is available to help me. So I'm going to use vibe coding to write a script to munge my data from format A to format B.
Because those are two pretty different problems.
Yeah, they are.
But just to pull back to my thing, because basically what I'm looking for is feedback before I write it down. And I didn't feel like sending a Google Doc for it to you guys.
Well, and you didn't want to ask, what your favorite LLM to.
Oh yeah. So then my question is, Do you guys think that this PR fatigue is going to be a thing or not, based on what? And do you think the fact that we have tools coming out that declare that they are going to look at vibe coded code and fix it with PRs, automatic PRs, which may or may not be accepted automatically?
Question.
Wait,
How do you,
wait.
okay,
Do
finish your
you
thought.
think that these tools using different models from the one that actually started with the coding, is that enough to start getting the trust that Chris mentioned? Or are we just making things more complicated than they actually need?
Uh, before we answer that, because I think the answer is B. The the what does vibe coded code look like? How do you know it's vibe coded code?
It has a lot of M dashes. It uses the word delve as the name of a variable a lot.
It has too many R's for the length.
It begins with import in an era of.
I'm a little
Hallucination.
teapot. I'm a little teapot, short and stuff.
That's a good question, though. Does it have a pattern? I haven't played around with it enough.
I'm guessing it does. I mean,
Does it have? It would seem that it would be more bloated.
It probably would, and I guess this goes back to the buy versus build. If you don't, I guess there's common tricks, and techniques, and constructs for way to write things like loops.
I'm going to apply the escape hatch of 9 among 10 people who deal with this kind of thing and say, it depends on how the model was trained, man.
You need to put that on a t-shirt.
But
that's a t-shirt. Right there.
I do have a similar one.
Even basic things like loop optimization, right? There are ways to optimize loops, right? And there's choices to be made on loop. In the past, at least, there used to be choice about loop optimization. Do you make it more verbose so you could do less, compiler optimization, or do you make it more compact and let the compiler figure out the loop? But those sort of structures, you're not going to be able to rely on, I think, right? And nothing in that will tell you whether it's vibe coded or not. You'd be relying on something else to indicate that it's a vibe feature.
I'm sure that there will be telltale.
Okay.
Because again, because of the way that these things work, right? At the end of the day, it's a bunch of monkeys throwing coins in the air and statistically telling you what the next token is.
That's true.
There will be patterns. There will be stuff coming out. And again, it depends on how they were trained, right?
What patterns do you think? What patterns do you think you would be looking for? Just if you
very
could predict.
Optimized idle loops.
So I just asked AI this question because why not? We should.
I didn't know that AI was listening. Oh, sorry, we didn't mean it.
It admits vibe code reflects what the AI infers from natural language prompts. It may create unconventional structures, inline logic, or variable names that feel right but aren't standardized.
So if you don't see foo, bar, or buzz, it was vibe code.
That's true. We should vibe code a tiny script that checks to see if something's been vibe coded.
I don't know. Ever since I started drinking Monster years and years and years ago, I always felt like I was vibe coding all the time. But
actually, there is a way probably to do this if you think about because vibe coding systems LLMs are trained on pre-existing content. If you utilize, and this is, I think, what they're doing for like college courses and things, papers. If you use an anti-plagiarism system, right, where you're looking for plagiarism, you're looking for pre-constructed pieces of snippets of code. If you see now the problem is if you see pre-constructed code, it could come from Stack Overflow or it could come from GitHub also. So how do you know it's been vibe coded versus developers copying from online sources?
Mhm.
If it comes from Stack Overflow, the first line always says you're wrong and you're an idiot.
True. Even on the best possible answer that really focuses on security.
It's walk away from the computer.
Yeah. So coming back to your PR fatigue question, I do see that we could enter a world where there is PR fatigue. If we've got all these tools that are vibe coding features for us, and then we've got a separate set of tools that are finding bugs and generating PRs to fix them, we could reach a world where there's hundreds of PRs being generated a day, and people just start approving them. But I think it all comes back to that trust problem. What's going to push people to hit the accept button instead of doing a tight code review of it is the trust. And if people trust the output of the AI, or as the trust meter goes up, people are going to click accept PR without looking at it more and more. And
I'm going to take the reverse approach. Accept is the easy answer. And so whether or not you trust the AI, you're going to click accept, because as a vibe coder, and I guess as the bulk of vibe coders, maybe not developers who are doing vibe coding, the bulk of them may just trust. There may be implicit trust. And as you learn more about how to make a good informed trust decision, you may not do the click through. Because you'll start to gain the experience to be able to say, oh, that one looks fishy. Right.
So let's throw a stone in the pond here.
Sure, why not?
Who is responsible for identifying the problems that get solved by a model generated PR? In other words, if we say you need a person in the loop to accept the PR. Some of the problems that started the generation of PR will come from a person that identified a problem and said, this needs solving. Others will come from the tool itself that read the code and said, there's a security problem here. I have to solve this. So assuming that the person in the loop is actually a value and people will stand for that and do the work, is it inherently easier to read a PR that solves a problem that a person identified or that a machine identified?
How do you know?
Or is there a difference at all?
How do you know that a issue? So now we're going back to the issue, not the PR. So how do you know the issue is identified by a human versus not?
True.
What information do you have that says Bill found this versus LLM Bill?
Oh, you get that on the PR author. It's going to identify itself as either a person. No,
you're really stretching this a bit.
On the issue.
The reporter may be a form. It may be a form that gets filled out, right? That gets automatically generated by a service agent or by a service. It's just, I mean, it could be a traditional service, or it could be an agent.
It could be a step in the CI/CD, right?
Right.
Oh, but that's the point. No, wait. If it's a step in the CI/CD, then yeah, it's going to come from something automatic versus something that is a person who have an actual user there identifying the issue.
Oh, okay. I see.
So,
although AI agents who are acting as users would be users.
Right, but they would have their own identities, and now we get the whole non-human identity discussion that we're not going to, because it's a great episode for the future. But anyway, so in my head, it goes again to the mental models, right? If it's somebody that identified something that needs fixing, chances are that in the course of identifying that, they already built that initial picture in their head of what's wrong, why is it wrong, what should we do about it. And if it's an agent, then of course there isn't, or he won't get it as kind of the PR. So is there a chance here for an advanced fixing agent that's not only give the PR, but in the comments explain what FPR, what they, I don't want to use the words think or imagine, uh, why they built the PR that way? Like what's the chain of thought that led to the PR being that way? Would that solve the problem of
Hold on, Dr. Evil's just entered
Dr.
the
Evil entered the chat?
chat room.
Dollars.
There we go. We got our cat on the internet fix.
Completely derailed the episode right there.
So
What we're
what do
talking
you
about?
think? I was asking
I think
if
you're doomed one way or another. There's
No,
so
you think
much.
so?
Well, I think there's so much problems in this, right? As agents get better, they're going to become more of a human-like identity. And individuals who are doing vibe coding are not in a position, or probably not in a position, to understand the differences, or appreciate the differences between human and non-human generated issues, and human and non-human generated code changes, PRs, to make a meaningful difference. It depends on what their goal is. If their goal is get this out the door, make a prototype so I can get funding, or so I go off and do something else, or so my friends can play some game or something, or whatever, they may or may not care, and they may just hit accepts. Versus those who are doing this for a living and understand how systems work, they're going to take the time, regardless of its source. And yes, I understand. The SOC example is probably a bad analogy, because when you're dealing with a SOC, you may have thousands of alerts streaming at you, right? They're going to be small events, right? They're not an incident declaration; they're events. This file read occurred, or this port was accessed with this data. A PR is a block of stuff with intent and meaning. And if you get 1,000 of them, by the way, if I was working on a software project, and let's just say I was working on a mid-sized software project, so there's a few developers on the project. If 1,000 PRs come in a group, or even if they come in like one a day for like a regular time period, that may trigger a different response than just simply looking at PRs, right? Because now you have a flood of regular incoming content. What happens?
So we just invented a new category for startups. It's a tool that does PR summarization at scale, and then the agent decides whether to approve or reject.
Can you vibe code that?
I already did it.
Somebody already.
It's already available for purchase.
Sure. No, but really, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if one of the many correctors, let's call it like that, out there doesn't already have the functionality, right? But I'm thinking about the three of us have a lot of experience, not only doing code reviews, but watching people do code reviews. How many times did you see someone look at code and say, that's good, move on? When you were like, wait, that's a bunch of loops doing arithmetic on pointers. Perhaps we should sit down and really read that code line by line. How many times have you seen that? And isn't that a kind of fatigue?
No.
So am I identifying something that already exists?
I don't know if I would classify that as fatigue. I would classify that as hubris.
Interesting.
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
Interesting.
Cockiness. I just processed that loop and I understand exactly what it does. Move on. Next.
Yep.
Yeah. Or the
And that's a
famous,
different,
it's
and
going to
that's a
be
different
okay.
developer. That's a different developer pitfall, right?
Yeah.
I want to come back to something you said, Izar, when you were talking about this advanced agent. Like perhaps we needed an agent that was advanced beyond the other things.
There we go. He's starting another startup.
Yeah, here we
Yeah.
go. But the like I expect traceability of any coding agent that exists today to be a core basic feature. Meaning I should be able to understand how it got to why it did what it did. And I should have an audit to be able to go back and say, you're laughing because it doesn't exist. But this is what I demand
No, 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 no,
to
no.
be a
I'm
vibe
laughing
coder.
because I think that's adorable that you think it should exist.
It should exist. Of course. You
doesn't?
should be able to, if we're gonna rely upon vibe coded and coded, we should extend the definition to agent generated code, because there's a lot more people that are using AI coding tools now that are developers using them, right? That aren't vibe.
I think that the word that they use is 10x. So 10x accelerated code.
There you go. It's negative 10x, but that's a different conclusion. But look, for this thing to really work, to be able to trust the code that comes out of it, you have to have traceability to be able to understand, like, what was the prompt that caused it to generate that particular code in the way that it did. And if you don't have that, then you have no security architecture
Well,
of
some agents
something
you
you're
can
building with
point to
these
some
tools.
piece of code and say, explain to me what's happening here. Right? And you are going to get a pretty good explanation, to the point that some of it you could cut and paste into a documentation doc.
But I want the intent of the agent. That's
I
what I
don't
want to be
think
able to, as a security person, I want to be able to understand why it broke, why it screwed it up.
from the little that I understand, and I could be wrong, I'm probably wrong. I don't think that the model even remembers how it got. It's like it's building that model in its head and forgetting at the same time, building and forgetting, building and
No,
forgetting.
they're
Uh,
storing everything
No,
now.
the reasoning and thinking models have memory. Now, how far that memory goes, I mean,
Yeah.
you do have problems, I think, of the number of tokens stored in memory, so you might lose some of that context. But so actually, Chris, are you talking about what the developer originally asked for when
Yes.
coding?
Yes.
Well, so let's maybe take a brief moment to talk about that. If you're developing something for a commercial organization, you have a not an issue, but you have a work request, work item, a Jira ticket or something like that. Which is why you're doing the vibe coding in the first place as a developer. But otherwise, I don't think you ever get this context, right? If you're looking at open source code, the open source developer had an idea in mind, a concept in mind, and out came code, regardless of whether they vibe coded it or not.
Mhm.
So even still, you're still required to, when you're doing the code review, like if you're reviewing open source code and you have an open source project, that project may be thinly described as to what its intent was or what its purpose is. What its purpose is, not necessarily what its intent was, what its purpose is, right? And so you're sort of stuck with deriving or understanding that meaning from the code. And this looks like it's going to be used in, I don't know, it's supposed to be implemented in hardware, or it's supposed to be for IoT only and not for, commercial applications. I mean, there's a host of
So
things you have to do there to figure that out, right?
what I'm realizing is that the argument that I've been building that I didn't really understand until this moment, until you crystallized it for me, is using an open source project as an example. Open source of the future is bigger than just the code. It's to be able to trust it. I need to understand, yes, the code will speak for itself, but if the code is so complicated because it was created by AI agents that I can't there's things hidden because it used some crazy logic that it thought was optimized to go faster, but it's really hard to read and understand as a human. The context, coming back to Izar's word he's used 100 times in this episode, the context of how the code was created becomes part of the open source project, and my ability to trust it
I don't think
says
so.
no.
I don't think so. Just look at what's happening today, right? Developers just download the first thing that apparently does the thing that they need to happen and happily move on. It could be
But-
written in Fortran with brainfuck and whatever. The important thing is that you put in the thing that you have and you get back the thing that you want.
But
I don't
that's-
think that all of a sudden they're going to start treating it differently because it was written by AI. If at most they're going to think, oh, it's probably better because it was written by AI.
Well, that's an interesting trust model.
Until we have the first named vulnerability as a result of AI agent committing a PR to an open source tool.
We may have
That'll
had that
be-
already. We don't know that, but that's
It hasn't been publicized as such. You think it would be, if it happened and somebody thought it, they would have sounded the trumpet because it would have gotten a lot of attention to be.
No, I'm thinking about that Echo whatever. Did you guys read about that one from last week?
no.
It was something related to MCP, and at the end of the day, it was pretty silly, and it did use prompt injection and echo something.
So maybe this is a call to action to our dozens of listeners
At least.
that if you are aware of an AI committed PR to an open source project that has resulted in a vulnerability appearing somewhere, put the CVE in the comments.
Echo leak.
Oh yeah, Avocalic. I saw that one.
CV 225-32711
All right,
with a
contest over.
CVSS score of 9.3. Everybody panic! Everybody panic!
Run.
No,
Wait, come back.
Wait, 9.3. So network accessible, privileges required. High.
What you just saw was math LLM that he has behind his ear takes the CVSS number and explodes the vector in real time in front of everybody. As you can see, it can be done. Is it useful?
No,
Inquiring
Not
voices
really.
want to know.
All right. Well, I think
But
we've
it's
had
pretty. It was
enough
not.
fun. This is enough fun for one day. We can, I'm
No.
sure vibe coding will be back again within the next couple of weeks. It keeps kind of circling into our view. But for Matt and Izar, I'm Chris Romeo, and thank you for tuning in to the Security Table.